This is Hertford County, North Carolina, population 23,275. It's located east of Interstate 95 and about 10 minutes from Virginia. It is a rural county with many similarities to other rural areas. But come with me, if you will, and think for a little while about food insecurity. In 2018, there were 4,580, or 18.9% of people in Hertford County who were food insecure, compared to 11.5% nationwide. The average cost of a meal was $2.77, and the amount of money that would have been needed to balance the food budget was over $2 million. 85% of the people here were eligible for government food assistance of one type or another. Moving to 2020, there were an estimated 45 million people, or 1 in 7, who experienced food insecurity in America. The numbers were almost 10 percentage points higher among Black Americans than white Americans. Projecting for the year 2021, the numbers look slightly better. But considering the racial disparity, it's important to note that Hertford County is 61% African American and 35% white, including 4.5% Latinx. We can look at all of this like a church potluck. There are different tables featuring different dishes in the same way that there are different sites from different community partners. Many of them are white-operated, and a few are minority-led. We see different tables, and we realize that the food comes from different places, some of it regional and bought by government grants and corporate food banks, and some of it brought from small minority-owned family farms. All of it is trying to feed people from different tables.
Gets what we call a basic box, which is one of these over here. That's pretty much some of all of this stuff in here, as well as these things. And then they get extra depending on how many are in the family. Okay, so this room is where we do the backpack stuff. Well, every week we deliver, currently we're doing 75 of basically something that looks like that. Before the COVID-19, we were doing probably closer to 250 a week, notwithstanding Christmas holidays and Easter break and summer break. All this is kind of liaison through the guidance office at the various schools that we're going to. It was actually Murfreesboro Middle, Hosky Elementary, Bearfield, and Murfreesboro Middle at one point in time. So when all that was worked out by the guidance counselors, who would identify those who were in need, and we just bring them the X number of packets. We deliver it on a Thursday or a Friday. Right now we're doing Thursday, and these are for the children to take home who might not have anything else.
Well, it changes every time we do it from month to month, but things are getting a lot better. Yeah, the program is real good now. We got approximately, we average about 350 people coming every month.
Yes,
we're gonna have at least 300 right here today.
So Farm to School to Healthcare got started probably around 2015, and it really kicked off, I think it was a perfect storm of a few things happening in the community. So at the time, I was really fortunate to be able to attend a a convening of sorts hosted by resourceful communities. There was a way to unite all these different pockets of people who were talking about food access and talking about social determinants of health, but they were kind of talking in their different pockets. And that's really what we kind of focused on, was those early relationship building and how to bring these energetic people from different spots, like the health system, cooperative extension, the schools, the community college, and really bring them in one room and say like, hey, let's do this thing. So going back to last spring when the pandemic hit, to have a program that was as hands-on as Farm to School to Healthcare is, all of a sudden say no hands, right? And how to connect with young people and youth when their whole worlds have been turned upside down with not going to school and not having the same activities they had and not being able to connect with their peers in the same way, was a big challenge, I think, for our partners. That's when we, kind of regrouped and came up with the virtual experience for our garden stewards over the summer. And we had great success with that.
While we were always about promoting the youth as leaders in the community, sometimes when we were face to face, it didn't always really reflect that, because they would always look at us as the leaders or whoever the trainer was. But in the virtual space, they really had to kind of step up and create those gardens on their own. And
in and around the ministry that know people that are in need and may not be able to show up, and they'll put something there and take them out. So that's pretty much
Yes, so Mount Sinai's been very gracious to host the distribution that we get.
Well, Caroline, she organized and constructs everything. We basically make sure that we have the place provided for her and try to send some aides to come out and support, but she's orchestrating everything to make sure everything is taken care of.
Well, Bishop Clark is amazing in terms of being a collaborator and collaborating with him and his church. They do provide the location, which is on the west side of Murfreesboro, which is, even though it's right at our only grocery store in town, there's a lot of need in that area.
And it's a lot of people that some of them on fixed income, some of them may be on disability. It lives in that area, and it's heavily populated on both ends of it. So it makes, I think, a really good place to be able to come out and lend assistance to.
So I work with the Latinx food distribution, which is the main part of the table that I work with, even though I go back and forth between the other ones. And most of the people that we serve are in and around Murfreesboro. Some of them come to the Murfreesboro United Methodist Church Spanish worship service. There was one man who was speaking to me a while back, and he said he works mucho trabajo, poco dinero. A lot of work, little money. He supports 4 here in America and has family members back in Mexico. This is standard for most of them. I know people who are veterinarians, nurses, paramedics, elementary school pedagogists with master's degrees, having worked for the Mexico national government, who are here, and only one of them is legally allowed to work. And it was cheaper, more cost-effective for them to move to America, for only one of them to work, than it was to stay in their home country. They're working here physical labor, like imported labor, and they make all of our lives possible. If any of you like to go to the store and bring home the bacon, you can thank a lot of these folk who work really hard taking care of the hogs in the hog farms and preparing them to eat. So I think they, working harder than me, definitely deserve the food that we share with them.
I wasn't gonna get what I wanted out of the houses, so I decided to start digging up the trees And one day I had this older man, he's deceased now, and I used to call him partner. I said, partner, you know what, I'm gonna farm. He said, what do you mean? I said, I'm gonna farm that little land right there. He looked at me, he said, how? He said, I said, I'm gonna dig up every stump. And I started grubbing up stump. I stayed out here every night till about 12 o'clock at night after my job, digging up stumps, grubbing, until one day I created a small field. I looked over there and I wanted another little field. And before I knew it, I had created the whole thing into a little farm. There is several older guys over in Hertford County doing it. They're actually growing produce. But that's what they always done. And it's a way of living. They make money, but they're also putting back into the community too. And you have to, because it costs to grow this stuff, but when you can put something back or give an old lady a meal, you've done your part. It looks like now it's damaged, but we'll cut it and see. I just cut down the middle, cut it this way, like that, and see what happens. So, normally, yes, we can afford to buy some things, but understand, if I do all of that, my kids won't know the meaning of a garden. My grandkids will never know the meaning of a garden. They'll always be looking for McDonald's, Burger King, and once in a while maybe a Hardee's. And again, that's not a healthy plate, you know. It's not there. I tell them every time we come out to the garden, it's labor, but it's a way of living, and it's a good way of living. And it's a way of letting you know you have to have work ethics to get there.
It's the Hosky Community Garden, although some people call it the Garden of Hope. In the next few weeks for the spring season, we'll be putting in some collards and some cabbage and some broccoli. But fact is, we have a fire ant problem, and for me to pick kale, I have to fight the ants, and I just ain't gonna do that anymore if I can help it. So, collards.
How many pounds of collards did y'all get last year?
Gosh, I was thinking maybe 400 or 500 pounds, maybe. I don't know.
Over here.
This is it's not really technically a greenhouse. It's called a high cone.
But I don't know too many places that still have ripe tomatoes in February.
Yeah.
Tell me about the hydroponics at the church building.
Well, there's that, and that's also been used to grow tomatoes and lettuce and I think just lettuce and tomatoes. That needs some work too. Well, it was started by Bill Haddock. I'm thinking maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Originally, it was just a little bitty spot that the town had written a grant for. Anyway, the town gave us a little bit, and then when they saw that apparently we were serious about it, they gave us a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and so now we have half the block. So there's grapevines down there, all the way down to the other end. There are something like 28 fruit trees scattered in here between the garden itself and the street. So when he said he wanted to have a garden, I thought, well, that sounds like fun, because I've had gardens before. I hadn't had one in a while, but I knew a little bit about it. So I thought, well, that sounds fun, and surely there'll be, sooner than you can imagine, there'll be a half a dozen or so people who want to help. Wrong. This is a whole lot of stuff to have to keep up with and manage when it's just a couple of people. I threaten to quit every other day, so apparently you'll need to check back with me tomorrow.
Yes, today we are doing a vegetable box distribution here at Mount Sinai Church of God in Murfreesboro. The vegetable boxes come from the food bank of the Albemarle. They're provided to our community free of charge. We do have another partner, Mr. Brown, who's a local African-American businessman. He's picking up the boxes for us, and they should be here any minute.
It's relatively easy to see how the food comes to the tables and is then shared with the community. It can be much more difficult to realize that struggle and opportunity come to all of these different partners, like the changing of the seasons.
98% of the land was virtually owned by black folks at one point in time. But they lost it through hard knocks. And what I mean by hard knocks, they didn't realize what they was doing when they said, well, we'll sign on the paper just to have a brand new car or get somebody out of jail. And that's how they lost it. They didn't know. No, they put the whole farm up.
A lot of attorneys ended up taking a lot of land from black people because the African Americans put their land up as collateral.
This past fall, I actually left my position as the director for school-based health services, which was a really difficult choice. Pharmaceutical healthcare was one of the programs that I cared most deeply about. And a lot of what I've done has been dumped now to Stephanie. From the beginning, I served as the facilitator.
So it definitely has been a challenge for the change in leadership.
Being one of the initial partners, I too wanted to make sure pharmaceutical healthcare was continued to succeed and grow and thrive in the community, because it has become such a big part of the county.
Well, he was what I would call the operations manager. So he was responsible for the daily operation, making sure that if we were running low of this, he went and made arrangements to purchase it and so on and so forth, and those type things. So, which is of course very essential to its existence.
So for pharmaceutical healthcare, like we already said, it started out with all these different ideas and thoughts and what we could do. And from that, it was really exciting and kind of mind-blowing. The opportunity, that this program could provide for the youth in the county. Coming back and working in the community that you grew up in, you can see how much it impacted our life. And then to be able to have the opportunity to show the youth today that there's so much that this community can offer if we just put our minds together and really work towards what we want to see our community have.
Even when we was feeding from the school, when we first started the pandemic, we had our shuttle bus that we would go and pick it up, and then we had a lot of different areas, be it in the housing authority area or in some of the courts, the trail court.
You can't put a dollar value on the youth. So you have to put all the interest in what we can learn and teach them for future generations. And you got a lot of people now that it's for the love of money. Everybody need money, but you can't use it all. So you have to put back. And this is what I call putting back into the younger generation. If you only train one child a year, it's worth your while.
I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. All God's children gonna sit together. All God's children gonna sit together one of these days. Hallelujah. All God's children gonna sit together. All God's children gonna sit together one of these days. I'm gonna feast on milk and honey. I'm gonna feast on milk and honey one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna feast on milk and honey. gonna feast on milk and honey one of these days. I'm gonna sing and never get weary. I'm gonna sing and never get weary one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna sing and never get weary. I'm gonna sing and never get weary one of these days. I'm gonna tell God how you treat me. I'm gonna tell God how you treat me one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna tell God how you treat me. I'm gonna tell God how you treat me one of these days. I'm going down to the river of Jordan. I'm going down to the river of Jordan one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm going down to the river of Jordan. I'm going down to the river of Jordan one of these days. I'm going to sit at the welcome table. I'm going to sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm going to sit at the welcome table. I'm going to sit at the welcome table